Good evening. Welcome to the commentary for Save State Gamer Episode 4, the We Will product review. This opening joke here, you probably think it goes on a little too long. I agree with you partially. You'll notice there's a really abrupt edit, which was not an intentional shot at Boars or anything. A few abrupt edits were, but unfortunately, considering how often I made them myself due to me forgetting lines or various other reasons, they're indistinguishable from the crappy abrupt edits that were there anyway. But the idea of that that endless URL, it went on further, and for some reason I cut it back. I'm pretty sure that was not intentional. I think I actually, when stringing everything together in Windows Movie Maker, forgot that I kept it going. And it's a shame because it's one of those jokes that starts out that it's not funny, and it goes a little bit longer, and it gets less funny, and it gets irritating, and it goes on a little bit longer, and then it actually gets kind of funny that it's still going. And unfortunately, my cut fell right before it would have gotten funny. Secondly, you'll see that tiny URL that flashes up. If you were to type that into your browser, it won't work anymore. You would have actually ended up at a Morshoe Show video, and it was Chris Boars Goes Insane or something, and it was just a loop of one of Chris's bloopers where he made a sound and silly sound and a silly face and stuck his tongue out. And it went on and on and on. And so that's what that was. There were two jokes there, and now there are no jokes because one fell victim to my poor editing, and the other fell victim to Morshoe Show closing his account. The underpants on the ground, fairly obvious joke. The interesting thing, if you call it interesting, is I had just done laundry, so I pulled out of the dryer a pair of underpants, put them on the ground as a joke, and a few days later I shot this insert that you see now. And if you notice, my fly is open, and that was intentional. What wasn't intentional is that the underwear I'm wearing there is the same underwear that was on the floor. It just so happened to fall that way, that a few days later, when I was shooting this, I happened to be wearing that same pair. You probably never noticed that. And I'm more comfortable with the fact that you wouldn't have noticed it than I would be if you had. The fly being open, by the way, it was only supposed to be in that one scene that you just saw, but if you watch the rest of the video, there are other scenes where it's still wide open. Well, guess what? The joke was really on me, as I did this in the morning. Not this scene, I guess later on, though. You'll see other inserts. I shot these on separate days, obviously. I unzipped my fly as a joke for when you're seeing the Wii Wheel, and went about my normal day afterwards. I think I went grocery shopping or something and had my fly down the whole time, so that's karma kicking me in the ass. The joke with the virtual console, as Crisbo calls it, is that none of the games he lists are actually available on the virtual console. Fairly obvious joke, but you'll notice Gilligan's Island is in there. Why is Gilligan's Island in there when I just did a video on it? Well, it's because in Gilligan's Island I had a runner where I would mispronounce the title of the game in a different way every time. The reason I did that is because I wanted there to be one specific joke that I was building towards, and that's Godzilligan's Island, which is actually a reference to a very brief moment in Inherent Vice by Thomas Pynchon. Pynchon is my favorite novelist. Inherent Vice is still currently his most recent work. It's an excellent book, and he makes a joke in there about a made-for-TV film where the cast of Gilligan's Island meets Godzilla. So it's a very, very, very obscure literary reference. I guess that Wizard of Oz Part 3 joke is in here. I was under the impression it was in an earlier video. My mistake. One thing I really like about Irate Gamer parodies is that whenever the parodist says hell, going to hell, it's glitched all to hell, you know exactly what joke is coming, and the anticipation actually makes it a lot funnier because you wonder how they're going to undercut it. It's always very amusing to me when you can see it coming a mile off, but you're not quite sure how it's going to arrive. Yeah, there's my fly. Did you see that wide open? This scene here is obviously, very obviously, a reference to the Kool-Aid Man review, which I think when I made this, I'm nearly positive, was Boars' most recent review. And I don't know that this was the first parody made after that. Other people may have beaten me to the punch on making fun of it. But I think every video that follows that I made makes some direct reference to his Kool-Aid Man video. So see if you can spot them all. I'm sure that would be a lot of fun. you and your mom or whoever you watch these with. Try to figure it out, you and your cat. That cough, by the way, a lot of people complimented me on that moment of timing. Thank you. However, interestingly, I had planned on the cough, but in the pause, I think I sniffled or something. I made some kind of sound that actually interrupted the timing. The cough has to come out of nowhere to register as something funny, which is why the music dropped off there too. The Bubble Bobble theme stopped for the first time because the cough really has to punctuate the awkwardness. But I had sniffled or something accidentally, and so I actually had to trim out the sound of whatever I'd done, the sniffle. I had to trim that out so that the cough could stand alone. And you can actually hear the audio drop out. The slight background noise vanishes. That video effect where the thing gets scrambled and the static happens, that's actually because I accidentally deleted some footage I needed for this video, and I cleared out my recycle bin, unfortunately, and I used some kind of file recovery program to resurrect those files, and it didn't really work as well as I would have liked it to have worked. And the video, though it was recovered, was in that state where it was all scrambled up with the static. It was unusable. But by a lucky accident, I was going to just use some television static or something in its place. Luck of the draw, the video I was working on actually needed the video to get interrupted, so I was able to use that footage. That was very, very convenient. And the Will It Blend sequence obviously is a reference to Boris and his What the Buck, the brand new Irate Gamer show. And I wanted to do a joke like that. I think a lot of people wanted to do a joke like that, I'm sure. It's such an obvious thing to parody. But unfortunately, it's a very difficult thing to parody unless you actually know some other like YouTube celebrity. I hope you can hear the air quotes as I say that word. Because who else, how else can you do that? How can you pull off Bors's idea of the show being taken off and replaced with this other character that people are already familiar with? But fortunately, and I hadn't planned this when I decided to do the Wii Wheel. As you remember from the first episode, the Wii Wheel is kind of built into the Safe State Gamer mythos. But I did happen to remember as I was scripting this that I had seen a Will It Blend with the Wii Wheel, so that just kind of wrote itself. A lot of happy accidents went into this, which is kind of unfortunate because I don't think the video is as strong as it could have been. I remember at the time really liking it. Looking back on it now, some of the earlier ones are actually better than this, and certainly the later ones really are. Unfortunately, I really don't believe the show started firing on all cylinders until the final 3 episodes, and at that point, its days were numbered. The only one that I've mentioned, question I got about this video is the face that I made in the Top Gun sequence. Not necessarily a shot at Boris. He has his over-exaggerated expression, so I guess that went into it a little bit. Mainly the AVGN, not necessarily a shot at him, but just the idea that Crisbo would recreate wholesale a sequence from AVGN. Right down to stealing the music, the Punch-Out music and everything that plays. It was explicitly burgled from that video. I just ripped the audio track and used that totally. And the footage of Top Gun was actually ripped as well. I think the crossfade at the beginning of the Top Gun video, you can actually see whatever the AVGN was playing before he crossfaded into Top Gun. Simple joke, but that's all it is. I did a few lifting wholesale of AVGN moments, and some were more successful than others. I do actually quite like that one. The later ones were kind of crappy. Like the one in the Portal review. I may or may not actually mention it at the time, depending on what else I'm talking about. But man, I should have cut out that whole sequence in the elevator. That would have bought me 2.5 minutes to make all these other jokes that I had to cut. Kind of pissed off about that, but you never really know in retrospect what's going to work best. You just end up having to cut things, and it's only later on that you can have your regrets. The face also, by the way, that I make at the beginning when I hold up the Wii Wheel is, that ugly kind of ridiculous face that he makes is one of many Tim and Eric references, where they would, the characters would make some kind of face, and you'd get a still frame of that, and that would become like a title card or something. This really unfortunate moment where somebody snapped your picture at an unflattering time. I wanted that to be kind of a runner with Crisbo, and you'll see on all of his, until I actually got drawn ones, which I really appreciated, you'll see on all of his original title cards that he's making the exact same face. One eye is rolled back in his head, the other is closed. Oblique Tim and Eric reference, absolutely. Well, that's about it for this episode. Have a great night. Before I let you go, I'm reminded just now of an anecdote based on that little story I just told. that a roommate of mine, he once said, he and I, we don't live together anymore, but he and I went out to a bookstore and we were looking through what they had on the discount rack or something, and they had a book of photographs of George W. Bush, and in each photograph, intentionally, it was pictures of him making, unflattering expressions on his face, and we were leafing through this book, and my roommate said to me something I think that was unwittingly profound, where he said that if he was president, he would either make funny faces all of the time or none of the time. And I don't know why, but that still amuses me to this day. The wisdom of man children. But that's about all. Have a great night, and I'll see you next time.